Shalom, when the stuff souls by giving no praise to Yahweh. Bash to Yahweh, Bashem Yahshua, Bashem Kakadash. Double honors to the apostles of great most honor and honors to you brothers doing the work, the most on truth and in sincerity. Yahweh's real name of whom the world eagerly calls God Jehovah. Yahweh, his real name is Yahweh. Son's true name is Yahweh Shai. And when we pray Yahweh, Ba Hashem, Yahweh booming in. Ha meaning that and Shah meaning names, Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai. Got this article, I'm just gonna, roll in the spirit. See where the spirit leads. But it's from the Guardian. It says the UK stole 25 million years of life and labor through slavery in Barbados. Right, says report. It says experts put estimate for economic harm done by 200 years of chattel slavery at $2 trillion. But stress, this is not an invoice, right? And you get a lot of jakes that who will then look at this and be like, yeah, we need reparations, and hey, you know what, we go and get reparations, but not from Esau. No, because that would just be getting reparations in a sinking ship, right? The scriptures tell us about the reparations that we're gonna get, right? So let's load up a few things, right? Let's load up that. Let's get Revelation 13, right? And then so let's read this, right? It says Revelation 13 and 9, right? It says, if any man have an ear, let him hear, right? If you've got the understanding, right? If you can understand, then understand this. It says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints, right? So this is what the Lord has basically said must needs happen. This is how you balance the weights, right? The scales, right? All right. This is Proverbs. False balance, like Proverbs 11 and 1. It says, a false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just way is his delight. Right, I was going into money, right, and basically, dealing righteously, right, but he be touching the apple of the Lord's eye and getting away with that would be a false balance, right? In fact, when we read Jeremiah 49 and 12, right, it says this. For thus saith Yahweh, behold, they whose judgment was not to drink of the cup have assuredly drunken. And art thou he that shall altogether go unpunished? Thou shalt not go unpunished, but thou shalt surely drink of it, right? That cup representing a slavery. Okay, here it is where the Lord's chosen, right? This is what Zephaniah, is it? Yeah, Zechariah, right? 2 and 8 says, for thus saith Yahweh of Lord, or the Yahweh of hosts, right? After the glory hath he sent me unto the nations which spoiled you, right? All of these different nations spoiled us, man. Right, it says Shalal H7997 says to drop, strip, by implication to plunder, right? And these nations plundered us, man. Right, they plundered us till we had nothing left, right? But they were able to build off of their and ultimately even just thought that just came into my mind, which when you really look at it, all of these different nations had a hand in in taking us down. But you look at certain countries that got massive loans to build from the West, right? Whether it be Japan, whether it be Korea, right? The land of Israel, right? What do you call? I'm thinking about, because there's certain countries that had a massive economic boom. China, right? Countries that had a massive economic boom from doing business with America post World War II. Right, getting loans and favorable business trades and dealings with America post World War II. Right, where did they get money to basically rather, how did America have money to loan out to these different nations? Through slavery. So ultimately, those nations have taken, because this is the thing, when you really look into it, all of these nations had a hand. I remember doing a video with the brother Shkan, he was going into all of these different countries, and the wool for the ropes was from here, the wood for the for the ships was from there, the metal for the chains, or the chains were manufactured in this country, etc., 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 right? So but this is just, that was then. But even looking at now, you have lots of nations that basically, benefited. Okay, so this is Psalms 83 from 2. It says, "For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up their head." Right? It says, "They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones." Right? They have said, let us cut. They have said, "Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance." Right? And that's it. That's why ultimately the elites of all of these nations have, enjoyed and, partook in our downfall. Right? So for they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. Right? Because they understand that when we're down in the mud, they can they can prosper, they can be able to do what it is that they're doing. Right, this is Judith 5, I think from 17. Right, so it says, and whilst, yeah, jumping straight to the point, you can read into it. This is a good book anyway, but book of Judith. It says, "And whilst they sinned not before their power, they prospered, because the Most High that hateth iniquity was with them. But when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many battles very sore, and were led captives into a land that was not theirs. And the temple of their power was cast at the ground, and their cities were taken by the enemy. But now are they returned to their power, and are come up from the places where they were scattered, and have possessed Jerusalem, where their sanctuary is, and are seated in the hill country, for it was desolate. Now therefore, my Lord and Governor, if there be any error against his people, and they sin against their power, let us consider that this shall be their ruin, and let us go up and we shall overcome them." Right? So that's why they be constantly pushing things for Jake to go off. Right? Media that ultimately is like, a media and enticement that Jake should not be consuming. Right? But then Jake sees it, and then the things advertised and in those advertisements, right, Jake start doing, right, and it's a what do you call it, it is against, the laws of the Most High. This is Micah 2 and 10. "Arise, eat and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. It shall destroy you even with a sore destruction." So this world is polluted, right? Everything about it. And when Jake is, the longer Jake is, is here, right? They get seduced into wickedness. This is Proverbs 12 and 26. It says, "The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduceth them." Okay, and that's Jake, man. Jake be getting seduced by Esau. Okay. So let's come back here at Judith 5 and 20. It says, "For now therefore," yeah, I read that one, verse 21. It says, "But if there be no iniquity in their nation, let my Lord now pass by, lest their Lord defend them, and their power before them, and we become a reproach before all the world." Right? So once again, these nations were happy that we were fallen, so that they can, have us in a state of degradation, so that we wouldn't be called, made us forget who we were. Now we can read that real quick. I won't blow the dust of this one. All right, so Jeremiah 17 and 4 says, "And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from the heritage that I gave thee." All right, it says, "And I'll cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not, for ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever." Right, and that's us, the children of Israel. Right, we annoyed the Lord. We pissed them off. Right, so this is why we're going through the punishment that we're going through at the moment. Okay, but part of that was that we, this time we would forget who we were. Right, and in that period of time, these nations have enjoyed us going off, because it's given them a season. Right, in fact, that's what is it? This is Luke 16 from 19, right? It says, "And there was a certain rich man which was clothed in purple and fine linen, and fed sumptuously every day," right? Esau beginning with the elites. Okay, he says, "And there was a certain man, a certain beggar named Lazarus, which was laid at his gate full of sores," right, representing Israel, right, and desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. Right, all Israel gets is the crumbs, right? But these dogs are the other nations, and these other nations have, spent, a season basically being built up. Right, you look at Ishmael, right? The lands that they, that they possess, right? And how, and that's another group of nations, right, that got rich post, World War II. Obviously, it was, they knew about the certain oil stuff like that, in them regions. But, you look at the loans and, the preferential business dealings that they've been able to make use of, right? America had a hand in that. Okay, but once again, where did the wealth for all of that came from? It came from slavery, right? So all these nations have been complicit. You look at China. China was just a nation full of farmers. Okay, when you like kind of look into the recent, actually relatively recent history of China, because what 1970, that's only 56 years ago. So you have people that basically were born into abject poverty, but now are traveling in high speed, comfortable rail, right? But once again, where did that money come from? Okay. Verse 22, and it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angel into Abraham's bosom, right? The rich man also died and was buried, right? Abraham's bosom, representing chariots, right? And rich man symbolizing dying, symbolizing the destruction of America. Right, it says, and in hell he lifted up his eyes, which, we shouldn't need to say at this point that this ain't talking about some place under the ground. It says, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. Here, that hell representing slavery, okay? It says, and he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send Lazarus, that he may dip at the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. But Abraham said, Son, remember thou that thou in thy lifetime receivest good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now is he comforted, and thou art tormented. And that's where we're going into, right? That trading of places, right? Which is beautiful. This is Deuteronomy 32 and 7. 32. It's 7, right? 30 and 7, Salakia. Deuteronomy 30 and 7, right? It says, and the Lord Yahweh thy power will pour all these curses upon thine enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee, right? So, what we're about to see is we've spent a whole load of time, right, on the bottom receiving these curses, but what the Lord is about to do, right, is he's about to avenge us, right, and flip it around, make it so that these nations are the ones going through the curses, right? That these nations are the ones that are that are working, right? Because Jake's been working, okay, to the point where there's a saying, they only started calling us lazy when we stopped working for free, right? But let me grab this real quick. This is Wisdom 5. It says, then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him and made no account of his labors. Right? You've seen, starting with the apostles on down, their teachers before them, right? They were, we stand bold, right? We stand bold against this man, right? But yeah, they made no account of our neighbor, of our labors. Calling Jake lazy and stuff like that, which we know Jake be wicked, we know Jake do some things, right? But the nerve, to the audacity, right, of these heathens, okay. So let me finish this in Psalms 83, right, verse 6. Now it says, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes, Gebal and Ammon, right, and Amalek, right? It says the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asa also is joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot. Selah. Okay. And that's it. Right. So yeah, we read Zechariah 2 and 8. So yeah, in fact, let me read it. I don't remember if I finished it. This is, for thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Zechariah 2 and 8. For thus saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, right, after glory hath he sent me unto the nations which spoiled you. For he that toucheth you toucheth the apple of his eye. Right, so with the apple of the Most High's eye, and he has touched us, so he's gonna have to pay, right? And he's gonna have to pay real, okay? Jeremiah 49 and 12 now, right? It says, for thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, they whose judgment was not to drink of the cup have assuredly drunken. We drank, right? You look into just the things that they even state that they say, right? Because what they say, there's a lot more that happened, okay, than what they bring out. We drank, and we're the apple of the Lord's eyes. So it goes on to say, and art thou he that shall altogether go unpunished? Thou shalt not go unpunished, but thou shalt surely drink of it. Right, and that ultimately is what we're looking for. We're looking for, the Lord to give us power, right, over these heathen nations, right, so that we can rule them with a rod of iron. Revelation 2 from 25 says, but that which ye have already hold fast till I come, right? We have this truth, we've got to hold it. Right, and he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. As the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. Right? So that's it, man. Right? So yeah, like I thought that was interesting. When you get into to slavery, man, you can just go on, right? You can go on, man. I'll put a link, in the description box. Gotta just do a few things before heading out to camp. So yeah, maybe there's a bit more in here of interest. But yeah, just thought to share that one. But yeah, as always, Lord's without us edifying. Till next time, we say Shalom.